It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe, and we begin with a milestone where President Bola Tinubu will today sign into law 4 tax reform bills aimed at transforming Nigeria's fiscal and revenue framework. The presidency, in a statement, said the 4 bills, which include the Nigeria Tax Bill, the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, were earlier passed by the National Assembly after extensive consultations with various interest groups and stakeholders. The signing ceremony is to be held at the Presidential Villa and will be witnessed by the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, principal officers of the National Assembly, the Minister of Finance, the Attorney General of the Federation, and other top government officials. Also, President Tinubu yesterday expressed appreciation to governors for their trust in him and pledged not to fail them. Speaking during a one-day official visit to Nasarawa State, the president thanked the governors for their consistency in pursuing the vision of the Renewed Hope agenda, which aimed to rebuild lives and the nation. Now to the National Assembly, where in a historic move underscoring federal intervention in subnational governance, the Senate on Wednesday approved the 1.485 trillion naira 2025 budget for Rivers State. The development followed President Bola Tinubu's submission of the appropriation bill to the National Assembly after the suspension of the state's House of Assembly. The Senate's approval came after the 3rd reading of the budget bill and consideration of the report by its ad hoc committee on Rivers State during the Committee of Supply session. The budget now awaits assent and implementation pending executive formalities. Also, the Senate was momentarily divided on Wednesday as it deliberated over the appointment of the chairman of the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, Michael Odey. Trouble started after Senator Abdul Ningi raised concerns about the propriety or otherwise to appoint a non-indigene into the position to oversee the affairs of the state electoral body. Ningi's observation was quickly supported by Senator Alin Dume, who warned against undermining the constitution. His argument was overruled after the chairman of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee, Okweyemi Bamidele, defended his committee action, which recommended the appointment of Michael Odey.
Mr. Chairman, why I'm making this, let it be on record that myself, Senator Abdul Ningi, objects and observe that if this thing becomes the norm, it is not going to do well going forward. Because I've been to Rivers State almost 40 years ago, and I know the quality of people in Rivers State. I do not see any logical reason why a Rivers man will not chair this electoral commission.
Let it be on record that I, Senator Mohammed Alin Dume, I'm not against the appointment of whoever you recommended, but under the current circumstance and the fact that if today you want to interview 100 or even 1,000 qualified people for this position from Rivers, you will get it to choose from. Federal character, section 14.3, reflects that. And as he rightly said, we should not, as a Senate, just approve or think that what is being done is not against the Constitution.
This matter does not call for any form of grandstanding. It is a constitutional matter. For any and every appointment, Mr. President, made pursuant to this Constitution, 2 things always stand out as legal principles: eligibility criteria and disqualification. You may be eligible, but be disqualified. And the 2 are well spelled out in our Constitution.
Today, Mr. President, we are saying that if 6 people from Rivers can be members of the Electoral Committee, what stops the 7th person from coming from Rivers? But if in the wisdom of the extraordinary leader there, he picks somebody from outside Rivers, one, he's from Cross River, and you know that there were some eyebrows raised when he was appointed administrator. Now he has gone to pick a Cross River person again.
Leader is pure politics because it's coming from APC. in Abia, head of service from Edo. Who is talking about that? So please ride on.
Well, more politics as in a dramatic turn of events, the acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Umar Damagum, has announced the reinstatement of Senator Samuel Anyanwu as the party's national secretary. He also postponed indefinitely his 100th National Executive Committee meeting, but PDP Deputy National Chairman South Taufik Arapaja and the National Publicity Secretary Debo Ologunagba, alongside other NWC members, have opposed the move, stating that Shetonji Kosheode remains the PDP acting national secretary. Arise correspondent Mary Chinda reports.
The PDP acting national chairman Umar Damagum, while announcing the reinstatement of the embattled national secretary, Senator Samuel Anyanwu, describes it as a very difficult decision. He also announced that the party's 100th NEC meeting has now been postponed indefinitely.
Anyanwu is resuming as the national secretary. I think that's the most important thing. We have no option but to abide by the decision. After due consultation and everything, we thought it's a bitter pill, but we have to swallow it.
Wednesday's announcement comes 24 hours after the acting party chairman led a delegation to INEC over the crisis surrounding the rightful occupant of the national secretary position and the observation of irregular signatures in its correspondences to the electoral body. Damagum was accompanied by the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum and Bauchi Governor Bala Mohammed, former Senate President Bukola Saraki, House Minority Leader Kingsley Chinda, and other stakeholders. But some members of the National Working Committee have now opposed Damagum's new decision. Party leaders like Deputy National Chairman South, the PDP National Publicity Secretary, and others, in a new statement with their signatures appended, insist that the June 30th NEC must hold as the decision was taken at the National Executive Committee meeting and that it cannot be jettisoned by any single individual. They also say that Koshedo remains the acting national secretary based on the resolutions reached at the last NEC meeting, the one that only NEC has the powers to reinstate Senator Samuel Anyanwu.
It must be clear that INEC has no role whatsoever in participating in regular meetings of these bodies that I've drawn to you. They have no role at all.
Meanwhile, the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, has called out Damagum for directing the embattled National Secretary Samuel Anyanwu to resume duty at the party's National Secretariat. He says Anyanwu never went anywhere.
National Secretary is not your appointee. National Secretary has been doing his work, so you can't call him to resume because of the illegalities you perpetrate. And that you don't show leadership. That's where you put yourself where you are.
With the party's 2023 presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar championing a new coalition devoid of the PDP, the deepening crisis in Nigeria's main opposition party continues to worsen. Many now worry if the party might not go comatose before the 2027 presidential polls. Mary Chinda, Arise News.
Oh, one day, one trouble for the PDP. Rufai.
I think somebody said the other day the party was in intensive care. I think at this point in time, I don't think the life support machine is working any longer for the PDP. Because for you to be in intensive care, you need life support machine and, other machines to be able to aid you to be alive. But the life support machine has started to wane. And it might just be the beginning of the end for the PDP because that's what happens to most political parties when hubris sets in. This was the same political party that Vincent Ogbulafo once said will rule for the next 60 years. So what is happening now? There's been a contention about having this meeting, having the NEC meeting and postponing it. So a faction of the party bet with INEC and they said, okay, Anyanwu will continue That was just yesterday afternoon. But prior to that time, Wike had said, no, Aya was already doing his job. So why do you say Aya will continue in the first place? And then the next thing, another faction came and said no to what Damagoga said. So obviously it shows that the party is rudderless. There's no leadership, there's no consensus. So nobody knows what will happen. So those that still believe that a miracle will happen in the PDP must be a miracle of the century. Because as it is now, I don't know what is going on with the PDP. I mean, it's all gone. Concerning Rivers, you see, I'm shocked that the Nigerian Senate is sitting there over an aberration in the first place, a democratic and constitutional aberration in the first place. The declaration of the state of emergency was false. And you presiding over that is presiding over an aberration in its entirety. And going ahead to be able to get somebody that will head the state's Resident Electoral Commission for a state of emergency and putting the sole administrator that's an aberration in a democracy just demonstrates what Fela sang in a song, calling demonstration of grace democracy. And it has gotten to the point that that's what we practice in this country. So they are both debating over a role and a position that is sole administrator, not democratically elected, serving in a democratic government, overarching democratic government, is going to appoint. This same Senate went ahead to pass 1.4 trillion budget. The democratically elected government put forward 800 billion, but because he had squabbles with his political godfather, and they pushed him through a state of emergency under the guise of security threats, which, when we look at it, we're still asking for the empirical fact that led to security threat in the first place. And everybody supports this aberration because it suits them. You know what happens when a country starts to go on this path? In no time, you'll see a lot of chaos because people will be disgruntled. And in no time, it will make mockery of the institutions. And you see, when a democracy starts to falter, the first bellwether you will see are the institutions. There's going to be an all-time lack of trust in those institutions. Today, if I put a poll forward and say, Nigerians, please vote, do you trust the institutions in Nigeria, democratic institutions? The result will be overwhelming. And maybe for good measure, we can put up a scientific poll. And when the trust is eroded in your institutions, people don't believe the institutions, then there's a big problem. Dr. Abati enunciated one of that tenets yesterday when he talked about the Senate being a rubber stamp. When we're talking as regards the budget, extending the tenure of the budget and running concurrent budget cycles. This is another indication. The Senate went ahead, did not even take empirical lettered votes. They took voice votes over a matter of national emergency, like a declaration of state of emergency. Isn't it indicative why a lot of Nigerians have lack of confidence in the Senate as a whole? So we are not surprised all of this is happening. And you see, it's only but for a matter of time. Once the institutions suffer lack of trust, the people stop trusting the institutions, then the decay goes further. Then hegemons start to take over. So it's now always a government of the strongest, the biggest, the man that can circumvent the already, he's had to destroy the institutions. And that's what Nigeria has become today. And when that happens, it's no longer a democracy. It becomes a government of kleptocrats. It becomes the government of what I call bullycracy, government of the bullies. And that's what happens. So it will be on record that we said it while it's happening in the Nigerian case. And for those that support the perpetration of this evil, it will be on record that we said it because it will come back to haunt all of us. The president signing those tax bills into law, like I said, that bill is a living document, but I'm happy. And even if I criticize it, I will commend them as regards that tax bill because we did bring forward a lot of scrutiny when it comes to that tax bill and we looked at it. But there are still many things we'll need to look at because it's a living document. I yield the floor because of time.
Okay, where do I start from? Let me start with Rivers. The big argument here is that the budget has been approved, 1.4 trillion for the government, the sole administratorship of Ibok Ete Ibas, who is from Cross River State, and that to oversee the proposed local government elections in River State, you have someone from Cross River State, where Ibok Ete Ibas also hails from. So at the heart of the argument is about indigenship and qualification. Now, let us say that indigenship settler politics has always been a problem in this country. However, the Nigerian Constitution recognizes the fact that you can live anywhere in the country. You can be part of any part of the country. Now, one of the persons on the floor of the Senate was quoting federal character. But there is nowhere in the enabling laws, either in the Constitution or in the Electoral Act 2022, which is the operative law, where it is stated that the chairperson of a river state or a state independent electoral commission must come from that particular state. Second, it's a 7-member panel that has been appointed to oversee elections in River State. Now, out of those 7, 6 come from River State. Only one person, Ode, is from Cross River State. And maybe the concern is about the fact that, he's from the same place with the sole administrator, and maybe, that would be, that is political, and, the outcome may be predetermined. But in terms of the provisions of the law, there is no such thing that a person who has been found suitable by the relevant authorities cannot organize elections in any part of Nigeria. And we have precedents of persons who are not from a particular state who have been posted to other states to go and conduct elections, whether national or state. However, the main issue is about even the validity of the idea of state, of the declaration of emergency. We had argued on this table that, look, the Constitution does not give the President of Nigeria the powers, even when he can declare a state of emergency, when there is war, and when there is a request from the state, and when there is an imminent breakdown of law and order in any part of Nigeria. Under those circumstances, the President of Nigeria can then declare a state of emergency without necessarily removing democratic structures. The minus in the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers is that the President unilaterally, even without recourse to the National Assembly, upturned the democratic order in that state. To that extent, there's a principle in law, est nihilo nihili fit. It says, from out of nothing comes nothing. If you have emplaced an illegality, an unconstitutional framework or regime, then of course everything that comes out of that ipso facto cannot stand on anything. So that's the whole principle of ex nihilo nihil fit. So some people can argue from that area, but this is not about legalese. What is happening in River State is about ensuring peace and ensuring benefit for the people of River State and ensuring that they are not shortchanged. Section 11 of the same 1999 operative constitution, as amended, gives powers to the National Assembly to make laws for the Federation and any part thereof, consistent with the clause about where there is a breakdown of law and order, a request in any part of country or any part of the country is at war. These are the contradictions that have been played up. But in any case, we'll see how it is resolved. The way to resolve it is to resolve it in the interest of the people of River State who need their democracy restored, not a regime of illegality and unconstitutionality imposed on them without prejudice to the kind of arguments that some other people have been trying to put up for political reasons. And we hope that all of this is not political, about some people trying to retain control over River State. But I will leave that part as we watch developments. 2, I have other issues to comment on. Tax. The President of Nigeria, we're told, is going to assent his signature, append his signature, and assent to the 4 bills that we have been talking about, tax bills, Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, Nigeria Tax Bill, Revenue Service Bill, Tax Administration Bill, 4 of them. Now, these bills, they are long overdue. I have argued on this platform that, yes, it's good for us to have a framework around tax administration in Nigeria. And, you know, the Taiwo Oyedele Committee, I think this is a major triumph for Taiwo Oyedele's Committee on Taxation and Fiscal Policy because of the controversial nature. When the president assents to those 4 bills today, we will have made progress. And that committee can, you know, beat its chest and say, oh, we have done well for Nigeria. At least we have concluded our assignment. The framework will be useful because before now, the tax administration framework of Nigeria was haphazard. It is, however, important that all the objections from the state governors, all the state governors have suddenly aligned with the presidency. The Senate has been also masturbating by saying that, look, we did consultations, we worked on this bill. They quote it as one of their major successes. Now, President Tinubu can also claim credit for these tax bills to say that he is the president who has decided to take the bull by the horns and address the issue of taxation. We are reminded by Oyedele and others that this is not about taxing people, punishing people. It's not necessarily about revenue. It's about expanding the tax dragnet so that there can be greater efficiency, greater transparency, and greater, fairness in terms of tax administration and justice. Those principles, we identify those principles as important. However, you cannot tax people in an environment where there is no productivity. The major challenge that President Tinubu faces is productivity, ensuring productivity, because it's when people are productive, when industry is productive, that you have things to tax, and you will have benefits for states, local governments, and the federal government. But in terms of the framework, I think it's a step forward. And if the framework does not work, then we can review the laws. Laws are living objects, Appropriation Act, Tax Bill, even the Petroleum Industry Act. The National Assembly is talking about looking at certain aspects of it. So within 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, we'll see whether these tax bills will work. If they don't work, we'll take another look at them. Now, as for PDP, it was Senator Gabriel Suswam who came to this program, and he said 2 things. He said the PDP was in an intensive care unit. He said that if the June 30 convention does not hold, that it will have grave implications for the survival of the People's Democratic Party. And, we see this morning that Senator Gabriel Suswam will appear to be very prophetic because his party is clearly in disarray. And the problem in that party is about leadership. The NEC is superior to the National Working Committee. At the 99th meeting of NEC took a decision that with regard to the position of the Southeast Caucus, that matters relating to the objections of the Southeast Caucus and to the secretaryship of the party will be resolved June 30 at the general meeting of the National Working Committee. And now what Ambassador Damagum's intervention has done is to derail all of that. Now, where is the Southeast Caucus in all of this matter? Because Southeast Caucus is saying that Sunday Anyang is not their man, that it is Michael Ode. Is that his name? No. Michael Ode is the INEC person in Rivers that we're discussing. It's Sunday Ude Okoye. That is their person, whom they recommended. And that the Southeast Caucus of the PDP doesn't like this idea of the National Working Committee or NEC dictating to the Southeast, which is a major part of the party. That's the argument of Senator Adolphus Wabara, who happens to even be the chairman of the Board of Trustees. So where is their voice in this matter? But the residual point that we can hold on to is that the PDP is in disarray. Will that convention hold? Debo Ologunagba and Umar Sani, they both say that the Constitution does not give powers to the party chairman to be the spokesman of the party, does not give him powers to overrule the National Working Committee of the party. And that's more or less what the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory was saying. Even if when you look at his own intervention, you look at his subtext, it looks like he is even saying Samuel Anyanwu never went anywhere. So the party is in ICU.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree on that point. Now, I'll just rush through everything very quickly. I'll begin with the PDP. And the question is, what is really at stake for the PDP at the moment? Because the stakes continue to get higher. Number one, we're aware that INEC has announced election dates for governorship elections in Ekiti and Osun State, which will be July and August of next year, meaning that mobilization has started in those states and soon will be gearing up for protests. Now, with the National Secretary issue in dispute, what will happen to those elections? Before, we would have thought that, possibly this is a minor issue that will be resolved in good time. But it's becoming clear that even with the creation of several committees, the factions continue to become deeply ingrained within the PDP. You have that faction that is following Governor Makinde and is growing in its traction and is becoming more vocal. Of course, you have those who are loyal to the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, and the party continues to pull in different directions. What else is at stake? Dr. Abati unpacked the Southeast inclusion in the party, with threats have been sustained from Southeast, from various members and key chieftains in the region, that they're ready to pull out because they cannot consistently live under an umbrella that continues to fall apart and continues to betray the very fundamental foundations that it was created under. And in the spirit of defection, we're now seeing some statements from key chieftains in other areas who are also beginning to express the fact that they may also be open to crossing the floor. Yesterday, I watched Kola Ologunagba being interviewed by Adeso Amorowan, and he said that, defection might be an option at some point. Senator Gabriel Suswam as well said, at some point, he's open to looking at his options. And you look at the registration of 110 new political parties, the proposed registration that INEC announced yesterday. So those who want to jump ship from PDP are spoiled for choice as to where they want to go and where they will take their constituencies moving forward. So this is a critical time. In Osun State, the governor who is supposed to have the state machine, the party machinery backing him to fight for his life, because the issue in Osun State continues to become more and more volatile by the day. However, he doesn't have the full backing and the full attention of the party at the moment because the party is in disarray. So several issues compounding when it comes to the PDP. We wait for June 30th to see whether there will be a NEC meeting and who will be present, and if it will be disrupted in the same nature. We've seen several PDP meetings being disrupted in recent times. Very quickly to tax. These tax bills are a milestone in many ways. But what is concerning is that as we see one arm doing the work to ensure that revenue is streamlined and revenue can be increased, the other part of the puzzle seems to be losing momentum and losing credibility. What is the status of our budgeting process? Yesterday, we took a deep dive into what is happening with our budget, not just our budget process, our budget spending, our budget performance. And that's both at the national level and at the state level. The Guardian newspaper this morning has a report about how the states have spent over 200 billion on renovations of various government houses, yet we're not seeing commensurate spending in social services. So what will happen? We celebrated that FAC has been increased for the states. Now we're celebrating that the revenue avenues have been streamlined. But what is going to be done with the money? Will it be streamlined and will it be impactful? So we need to continue to turn our attention on our budgeting process and ensure that credibility can be built back, integrity can be built back into the budgeting process, or else all the success of the tax bills may end up being in vain. Very quickly before I go, on the issue of Michael O'Day and the Rivers State Electoral Committee, well, some might say this can be divided into ethical issues issues and constitutional issues. Ethical in that it is not illegal for a non-indigent to be appointed in this position. But what Senator Ningi and some are saying is that the state is already in a state of emergency. So bringing someone from outside could further inflame issues on the ground. On the constitutional side, there's a group called the Center for Reform and Public Advocacy who are saying that the power to appoint the Electoral Commission in a state is enshrined, constitutionally enshrined in the office of the governor. So this appointment in itself is a constitutional anomaly. Well, we'll continue to watch as things develop.